right now.
Okay. Okay. Hey, everybody. I'm Liz Fenton. I'm here with Lisa Stanky. She is my best friend of over 30 years and also my co-author. We've written 7 books together. The most recent is How to Save a Life, came out July 14th, and it's a dark, heart-pounding love story with a Groundhog Day twist. And it's available along with our backlist at Warwick's, who we partner with every week, and I'm going to give it to Julie.
Where are we getting, after so many weeks of this, I think we're going COVID crazy. I think.
Yeah. I could recite that in my sleep, but
I know, and then it's one of those where it's like, and to all of you that join us every week, because I see some familiar faces, sorry, but you're going to hear me say the same thing over and over again. But Liz and Lisa, thank you again. This series has been so much fun, and we have highlighted some great authors. Christy, it's so great to have you at Warwick's, even virtually. Christy and I are drinking partners from back in where were we at? We were in Baltimore.
Yeah, and Los Angeles.
Yeah, and LA. That's right.
Oh, wow.
Christy was with who was it? Jenny?
Kelly Jenner.
Kelly Jenner, yeah. She was at the same dinner where we were, like, David Letterman and those guys were at. So that was a pretty fun LA dinner. Anyways, a side note. Warwick's is actually open for, I got sidetracked. You guys aren't gonna let me do this anymore. Warwick's is actually open for business. You can come to the store and browse books. We would love for you to come into the store. There's a whole other side of the store that you can shop that has wonderful things like pens and fine art and jewelry and just lots of fun things that are there on the other side, as well as books. But like I always like to say, any way that there is to get a book, you can get it from Warwick. So we're going to put Christy and Lisa and Liz's books in the chat, so you can just quickly click on that. We can ship it to you. You can come to the store and pick it up. If you live in La Jolla, we'll drive it to you. We are located, and for those of you out of towners, we are located in San Diego. In the La Jolla area. So anyways, I think I said everything I was supposed to say. If I left anything out, I'll say it at the end. So have a great conversation, and I will be looking at people in the chat room. So give us some questions.
Thanks. Well, Christina, we're so excited to have you here today. And so excited about your debut. So a little bit about Christina. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, the Sun Magazine, and in various literary journals, including Glimmer Train, Pleiades, and Hobart. She holds a PhD in creative writing from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. The Second Home is her debut novel. So welcome.
Thank you. It's so fun to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. So Meg Mitchell-Moore, who we actually had here a couple weeks ago, had this to say about The Second Home. Every Wellfleet sand dune, every breeze and beach and pond came alive for me in this beautiful, heartbreaking debut about a Milwaukee family's complicated history with their summer home. Christina Clancy's characters are so real and flawed, so caught between the darkness and the light, that they step right off the page, and you won't rest until you know what becomes of them. What an amazing blurb, by the way. I got goosebumps reading it. It's so beautiful. Can you tell us what The Second Home is about?
Sure. Well, really, I think what The Second Home is about, it's so interesting because I just finished my second book. So you get to this point where you write the whole book, and then you think it's about something, but really it's about something different. Yeah. So I think The Second Home really is about when families change, when generations shift and the kids have to kind of become the oldest in the family suddenly and figure out what that family is supposed to look like, and whether, you can stay a family if it's productive, if it's healthy. So I think that's really what the book is about. But it's the family is the Gordons. They're from Milwaukee. They're very working class. The parents are more middle class than working class, but the parents are teachers. They're kind of former hippies, and they have a house that they have owned in Cape Cod, and they go there every summer. And then one year, Anne, one of the daughters, befriends this kid named Michael, who's her same age. They're 16. And when they're there, they decide to adopt him. But then that summer, everything goes wrong. There's kind of a traumatic event. And after that, the siblings become estranged. And then 15 years later, they find each other again because the house is up for grabs because the parents have died. So they have to figure out what to do with the second home. So I think a lot of people who have owned second homes or have any kind of like friends who've had second homes know that it can be really tough with a second home. We have a lot of really powerful associations and memories with second homes, yet, what happens when, different people have different ideas about what to do with them. Like you can't cut a house into 3 parts. So the book is really about how these siblings come back together again, reconcile what had happened, all their misunderstandings and miscommunication, and whether they can or not.
It's interesting you say that, because my second question, I read that Wellfleet well because of the time you spent there as a child, and you had mentioned in an interview that I read that second homes are memory bombs. Can you, and I love that. That's actually like, I'm going to use that actually one day, like, and I might take credit for it. No, I won't. But, I'm thinking that's what you meant by that, right? Like all that history. Can you kind of talk about, why Wellfleet, why that town, and what's your personal connection?
Oh, sure. Well, actually, like behind me is I don't know if you can see that painting. That's my great-great-grandmother painted that. And yeah, so my grandparents had a house in Cape Cod that had been in our family since the 1890s. And then when my grandparents retired, they lived there year round. So they weren't like summer people. They were actually much more, they did Meals on Wheels. They were on the library board. They were really active in Wellfleet. And so when we'd go visit them, and actually it's funny because my friend Betsy is on the phone right now, or on the call, Betsy Witt. She's one of my dear friends from high school, along with Ellen O'Sullivan, who's on. But Betsy actually came out to visit, so she can vouch for this, that my grandparents were very strict. And my grandfather used to be the headmaster of boys' schools. So he was like, he'd send you away from the table if you didn't hold your knife properly. And my grandmother got upset with Betsy because she used a hand towel or a hand towel to dry the dishes. So we would kind of try to escape my grandparents. They were nice, but they were strict.
Right.
Went to the neighbor's house, which was this old lady named Mrs. Andel lived next door in a house that's one of the oldest houses on the Cape. And so we'd spend all of our time over there. And that's where the book kind of takes place for me, is in this house that was, where I played Yahtzee and bingo and Parcheesi and Pollyanna and cards and jigsaw puzzles. And so I had really fond associations with it.
Yeah, absolutely. We spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house on the beach, and it felt like a second home. And I actually lived there after college, and it was for a year with my friends. And it was just really interesting to live there as an adult after having so many child memories. There was cool and also disconcerting at the same time.
I think for homeowners who get second homes, like when you're a kid, everything's done for you. So it's just, you're there to play and have fun. But we have a cottage, a lake cottage here in Wisconsin, and it's work. I just got the bill for putting the pier in, and there's always something that goes wrong every year. So you kind of view it a little bit differently, where you think less nostalgically about it,
Right. Well, and it's interesting. So I was stalking your Instagram account, and I saw that you had posted a New York Times article about how in the time of COVID, people are making their second homes permanent homes, and remarked on the timeliness of your novel, The Second Home. Did you want to elaborate on that a little? I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because, well, as you guys probably know, when you publish a book, you sometimes want to write essays as companion pieces to draw attention to it. So I kept thinking, I'll write essays about, returning and slowing down and the value of second homes. And then that article was really made fun of a lot, actually. On Twitter, people were joking about how one woman was complaining about with her second home, she moved there year round, and she didn't want to creep past her son's bedroom to have to get to her second kitchen. I think a lot of people, right now, I think a second home feels like the most excessive, luxurious thing, because people have been stuck in apartments and cities with nowhere to go and no body of water. You can't go swimming in pools. So all summer I've thought, of all the topics in the world, it is timely to write about second homes, but nobody wants to hear about second homes right now.
Right.
They just seem so expensive.
The ultimate privilege, right? To have not one home, but 2 homes, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So your cover is great, It's simple. Yeah, hold it up if you have it. Yeah, it's simple, but it's beautiful. Tell us a little bit about how your cover came about. Did you have any input? I know that can vary publisher by publisher.
Well, that's, it's fun too, because I just did my second cover. So I was deep in cover land last week. It's funny. So in my contract, it says I have consulting rights. So they will want to show me a cover and I can say whether I like it or not, but ultimately they make the decision, which is smart because writers aren't salespeople and you don't necessarily know what's going to sell. And I think some writers could get really attached to one idea that just won't resonate with readers. And there's this phrase that they use a lot in cover design. I don't know if they use this with yours, but the stopping quality. When you have people scroll or walk through a bookstore, you want a cover that's going to make them stop on it. Mm-hmm. So I think this lighter cover, the designer said she liked that. But my editor was working on the cover, and the first thing for the cover actually was my name that we had to figure out, because I go by Christy, and they asked if I'd be okay going by Christina, which I kind of liked because I like having my professional life and my personal life a little bit separate. But they thought Christina looked more elegant on the cover, which I thought was really interesting. They thought Christy sounded too youthful. And I kind of loved that youth would be a problem for me. So then my editor I love my editor. She's really great. She gets really enthusiastic about things, but she sent the picture of the cover and she said, when I saw it, I just threw my hand to my chest and gasped, and I thought, this is it. And then I responded and I said, if we were standing next to each other, we'd look like we were about to say the Pledge of Allegiance, because I would have my hand on my chest. I just loved it instantly. The artist is she's Canadian, she's named Elizabeth Lenny. And if you go on her Instagram account, you'll see the most amazing images of people in water. And they wanted to use that same design for my second book, but they decided not to. They couldn't really find one that would work. But I have to show you something. Sure. So my mom is a knitter. Maybe you saw this on my Instagram account too. And she knit a sweater to go with the cover. So it's like all in mohair. I wish you could feel it. It's so soft. But this is the, isn't that pretty? So, and it has this, like, I don't know if you can see, like, that cable work is so pretty that she did.
I'm petting it right now. I'm petting it.
Yeah, it was cute. So now she's working on the second cover, which I'm not supposed to reveal it for a couple of months. Right. So, well,
that is awesome. That is absolutely beauty.
Hey, Liz.
Your audio.
Something's going on with your audio.
Mm-hmm. While she's dealing with that, we have a question from Anne. She's saying, my apologies for my webcam not working. That's fine. She says, I wondered if Christina/Christy could talk about how long it took to go from the first words to publication.
Oh, that was a long process. So my first book, or the first time I started writing this, was maybe 2012. I think. I got my PhD and my mom took me to Panama to celebrate. And while we were there, I hung out we were in this little island called Boca del Toro, and I hung out at the little bar. Just no surprise to Julie, my drinking buddy. But I met the bartender, and she was a surfer and said she never went home. So she was so interesting to me. And I thought, I'm going to write a book and bring her home, and then the wheels started turning. The problem is I was working on a different book at the time that didn't have a plot. And so I didn't quite know what to do with it. And then I would work, I was a professor, so I would work during the year teaching, and it was really hard for me to go back and forth from teaching to writing. So I would just not really try. I'd write essays and stuff, but I would only work more in the summer. And then about 4 years ago, I got really serious about it. And then I'm friends with a woman in Los Angeles, actually, who worked in reality TV, like for The Bachelor and Shark Tank and all those shows. And she was great because she would read the chapters and say, what do you want this chapter to do? And once I started thinking of it that way, it gave the book more of an engine. And so then I kind of felt like once I started thinking of how each chapter is building that story, then it made the whole book seem to come more to life. So that's, and then it kind of, I guess I finished it two years ago when it sold. So it's a lot of work.
That's awesome. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk. And while I was getting my new headphones, I hope you didn't cover this, but title. Was that always the title? You had it? Did they change it? Tell us a little bit about that.
The title originally was, The House on Drummer Cove.
Oh.
And my agent thought that was too derivative, whatever really that meant. But maybe that was a good decision. And then the other title I liked was No Place Better Than This, because that's what I kept thinking. But you don't want to start a book with the word no. It just sounds negative. And then my agent also said, I like it, but I forget it. And every time I think about your project, I'm like, wait, what is that title? So then I thought about the second home, but I just couldn't believe it wasn't taken. It seemed so good and perfect for the book. And and then I looked and it really wasn't there. So I just grabbed it. And then I think the title, I remember my editor telling me that the title helped sell the book.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I mean, I think there's so many same titles out there. I mean, we've seen titles come out like within a month of each other, similar titles. So to get like a truly original title these days, I think is quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, titles are really hard too, because you don't know how people are going to think about them. I didn't know I like having a title that has kind of a like a noun in it, like one word that you can think about that helps you remember, like crawdads is really an effective title, I think, for that. My new title for my second book is Shoulder Season.
Ooh.
And I like that because it's like shoulders, it's a double entendre for like the time of year, like between peak and off peak. But then also she's a Playboy bunny, so shoulders.
Showing her shoulders.
Yeah.
I like it. You have good titles. How do you come up with ideas? I know, like with us, we typically come up with our concept first and then kind of drive down to characters. And you may have covered this again a little bit when I was grabbing my audio and talking about how your friend was helping you shape the book. But, what's your process?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Okay, hold on.
How do you come up with ideas?
It's just like your process. Yeah.
It's really hard, but I think it's hard for me to answer that question right now because I'm trying to think of ideas for my third book. And I'm kind of in that palate cleansing part of writing. So I'm looking for ideas, and I've been thinking a lot about how I do this. How did I do this before? I think a lot of times I like, when you shop and you want to buy something to wear and you don't want to wear something that everybody else is wearing, but that's still cool. I kind of think there's like, when you think of an idea for a book, you want that same quality. You want something that not everybody's writing about. And it can be hard I try not to go by the zeitgeist of what's popular or what's selling right now. Because by the time you sell a book or write a book, everyone could be writing something totally different. You might be like, a friend of mine just tried to write a novel in the style of like Kurt Vonnegut, and people just aren't, reading serial comics anymore. So it's, he wrote it not worrying about what the market is going to be, which can be good or bad. But sometimes people will say something like they'll just tell you a story about something a friend had gone through or something, and you'll think, well, that's interesting. And a lot of times it's just that, like, well, what if this happened to me, or how did this work out in history? For the second home, I think the idea, just meeting that compelling character was so interesting. Just thinking, what's her life like? What's that like to never return home? That was super interesting to me. And then for the Playboy bunny thing, it's set in 1981 at a resort that's no longer a Playboy resort. And I just think it's so weird that there's a Playboy resort in Wisconsin, that there ever was.
I didn't know that.
No, it's so, and there it was
news to me.
Yeah, it's so weird. The more I researched it, it was like that outfit nobody else is wearing. Like, I couldn't believe nobody has written a book about it, because it was a family resort, yet it was Playboys. They'd have nuns there. They'd teach nuns how to ski, the Playboy bunnies would. Like, it's just, and they're all dairy farmers' daughters, so it's that kind of like, it hits your ear as just a little weird. Like, something's a little off about this. And I think that usually makes for good fiction, when you hear something that doesn't seem like something everyone's heard already.
Yeah, will it be more in the vein of like historical fiction, or?
It is, I think they're thinking of it as historical fiction, and I think the copy editor who worked on it did more historical fiction based on the research they did on the questions, or on what I'd written.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta say, like, it's so weird to have something that you wrote about a time that you lived be considered historical fiction. Like Greg Allman is in the book, and Pat Benatar. It's weird to think that's historical fiction, but
right.
It is.
I know my daughter, we had friends over, or just a couple over, we were playing an 80s playlist, and my teenage daughter was like, oh, is that like when we play the 2000s playlist? And I was like, oh my, wait, the 2000s or like the 80s playlist for like, really? It felt so old. I just was like, really? That's your 80s playlist is 2000s? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, your kids will
I had to work through it. So this is your debut, as I mentioned, and I love, both Lisa and I, we love hearing people's origin stories, like how did you get your agent, and you've talked a little bit about the agent to the selling process, but like, how did you initially connect with your agent?
My agent I found through a friend of mine. She's not open for just open submissions. So you have to have a connection to her, unless she has an intern, and then she's open that time. But she just said, I think she'd be a good agent for you. I just started querying, which is where you write kind of a pitch for what your book is. And it's hard to write. You can spend as much time working on a query as the book, as you guys probably know, because you have to write it in the style of your book and have compelling questions without sounding too salesy. And so I queried her, and I had a really easy origin story, because I got a lot of interest right away. And then I really liked my agent because she's been in the business for a long time. She's super experienced, which was great, because then when she sold the book, it sold right away too. She sent it out on a Thursday. It was fun because I was in Los Angeles, actually. I was visiting my son who goes to USC. Mm-hmm. And I left on a Thursday, so I was at the airport when I got her email saying, these are the editors that we sent your novel to, and you should hear something, in months and months. Don't worry about it. We'll probably get rejections from all these, and then we'll just go with the next list. She's always setting my expectations low. Mm-hmm. So I just thought, oh, okay, that's fine. That was Thursday night. And then Monday morning I went for a run. And when I came back, my phone was on fire. I don't run with my phone. She's like, call me, where the hell are you? So I had what's called a preempt, where my editor had just switched from Atria to St. Martin's Press. Mm-hmm. And so I was one of the first people that she was buying a book from. So she was really serious about it. And apparently she told my agent at a meeting that she had with their agency that she was looking for a novel set in Cape Cod. So that helped a lot. My agent was like, ding, ding, ding. So she sent it to her, and then she called me, and she just came. We were trying to get an auction going, but my editor was very aggressive about just wanting it and not wanting us to go through that. And then I talked to her, and I just loved her. She wears a dentist bracelet. It's just like,
it sounds like Sarah Canton. Are you talking about Sarah Canton?
Yeah.
Yeah, we worked with her at Atria, so I figured that's who you were talking about.
Oh, she's fantastic. Like, she's so smart and so enthusiastic, and I feel like she's just my partner in this process the whole way. She always responds to every email within 24 hours. She's just amazing. So a lot of my friends who have bad writing stories, I can't relate at all.
Yeah. She's really great. We worked with her on a couple books, and
oh, that's great. I'll tell her you guys say hi.
Yeah, please do. in doing my research, I saw that you have a PhD in creative writing and you've also taught. What advice do you give your students that want to follow in your footsteps, become a novelist?
I think it's a lot of advice that you probably hear a lot on this show when you ask students that or people that. But I think the thing I'm learning now is that writing just takes a lot of work. It's, I think the thing that bugged me the most when I sold my book before it was out was when people would say, oh, if I just had the time, I'd write a book. And you can't just write a book. It takes so much time to read other people's writing so you can kind of like find your style and find other writers that you can emulate. And it's just a lot of time sitting and slowing down and thinking. Have you guys ever heard Mary Gateskill read?
I've not.
It was revelatory for me. When she reads out loud, she reads super slow. She wrote this collection of short stories called Bad Behavior that I was like, where has Mary Gateskill been all my life? But when she reads so slowly. And I thought, I need to focus on that being part of my practice when I write, like really pausing and hesitating after a sentence and thinking, is this really saying what I want it to say? Just kind of, it takes so much time. We're in such a rushed culture. It's really a totally different thing to go slowly and really think about the ideas and let a story take shape and give it the kind of breathing room that it needs. So I think, just being a hard worker, slowing down, being purposeful in your writing is so helpful, and just reading so much.
Right. Yeah, that's actually all really good advice. And I think different, than a lot of the advice you hear. And I do think perseverance is really, such an important part of it that people don't really realize. And I think they also don't realize too that even once you get your book deal and your agent, there's still a lot of ways you need to persevere, overcome rejection, and things like that too. So I'm curious, how much do you outline? Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser?
I'm a pantser all the way. I think it's so much more fun to write when you don't know where the story's going. So when I write, I just kind of let the story take shape, and it can be frustrating and scary, and you have to do a lot of rereading of your own work when you do that. Mm-hmm. Every time I open my document, I have to go back a couple chapters and read to get it, first of all, into the rhythm of my voice, that like cadence of language for the story. And then I like to just think as I go. And then the most fun part for me is after you've written a couple of drafts and you feel like you know the characters, you know the setting, you know the plot, and then suddenly your characters will start telling you what to do next. And that's just next level magic. It's so much fun when that happens, but it doesn't happen until really late in the game, I think.
Right. Yeah, we're in between plotters and pantsers, and the same thing. I mean, we like to keep it organic. So before we were in our little room before everybody came in, and we were talking about book clubs, and you mentioned that people have really strong opinions about the book in book clubs. And so I was actually curious, like if you had to choose a character, and if you want to choose two, you can, who you would have dinner with, who would that be?
So this is kind of a funny thing that you learn so much about your book when you talk about it. And in book clubs, that's when I get these kinds of questions that make me think differently about it. But somebody was asking about Connie in a book club meeting, and they said, how come we don't hear from Connie very much? She's kind of a quiet character. We hear more about her than from her. And I thought, Connie's on vacation. And that Connie's the mom in the book. And I was like, I don't want to disturb her. I think when I was writing, I just wanted her to be on vacation. And so I think I'd maybe have dinner with Connie, because she doesn't get to say, like, you hear from one of the other parents later on. I don't want to give away too much about the book, but Connie, she's more enigmatic to me. I'm curious how she took all this in and what she knew and what she didn't know. And because a lot of times, like, my mom sees stuff and she knows things are happening, but she doesn't talk about it.
Right. That's actually a really cool answer. I love that answer. Okay. Lisa, I know there's a question out there.
Yeah. Christine is asking, what authors inspire you as a reader?
Oh, so the book that I'm just crazy for, I always tell people to read it. I feel like a broken record, but it's so good. It's a book by Miriam Teves, Toews, but you say it Teves. She's a really popular Canadian writer, and it's called All My Puny Sorrows. And that book blew me away. If I could write a book just like it, I would definitely try. But I love that book so much. I was actually thinking of rereading it while I start thinking about my third book. I've never in my life wanted to connect more with the narrator. Like I just wanted her at the end of the book. I missed that narrator so much. So I love that. I really love Housekeeping by Marilyn Robinson. That is just a gorgeous, luscious book, and it totally haunts me, and I remember it so vividly. I love Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. The Sound and the Fury by Faulkner is probably the book that blew me away the most. I love that book. I love short stories by John Cheever. I just, if you ever read the last paragraph of John Cheever's stories, they're so masterful. Like I just think he's so, he's amazing, or was amazing. So I think those are some of the books that really stand out to me the most.
That's awesome. So we were talking about this a little bit before too, before everyone got here, about launching a debut novel in this pandemic, because Lisa and I will speak from experience. Launching a debut novel is very hard, even in the very best of times. It's a very difficult thing to do. There's a lot of books out there. It's crowded. So tell us a little bit about your experience. And then now that you have like the benefit of 2 months hindsight, what would you do differently?
I don't think there's much I could really do differently. So for those of you who don't know, my book launched on what some people have told me is worse than launching right after 9/11. my book launched on June 2nd, which was during a social media blackout. So the marketing director of my press was like, we cannot promote your book this week. It's, we're doing all Black Lives Matter books, and, and making space for that, which is, and I think that's great. It's just, kind of hard when it's the day your book is coming out. So I couldn't really say anything about it. And I don't know if the book lost momentum or not by not being out there that week, but I don't know that it really did. I think that maybe it's fine, but I do sometimes wonder what it would have been like to have a regular launch day. They thought about moving my launch day to June 22nd. But then Amazon picked it as their book of the month for the month of June. So their agreement was that they wanted it to be for the whole month of June. And Amazon, it's always so weird to talk about Amazon when I'm talking about to a independent bookseller, and Warwick's is so great. Look, somebody just left. But I really have a hard time talking about it because I'm so, I love independent booksellers. So it's hard for me to even promote that, like to even say that was going on, but it was helpful during the pandemic, I think, because that was when a lot of stores were still closed. So anyway, so then I don't know that I'd do anything differently though. I think I was actually pretty upbeat about it. I never cried about it. I never was, having a pity party. It was what it was. Things are hard for everybody. So I was fine with that,
Right. No, that's a great attitude. So you talked about what authors inspire you, but I'm curious, not overall inspiration, but like what are the 3 best books you've read in the last 6 months?
Well, right now, let's see. I really loved Amy Meyerson's book, The Imperfects. I know she was on your show.
Yeah,
she's terrific. She's become a friend, and like we actually met when I met Julie when I was in Baltimore in January, and she's just fantastic. And so I loved her book. I've been doing so much reading too. So a lot of books that aren't out yet though, which is hard. So my friend Lauren Fox, who lives in Shorewood in Milwaukee, she wrote a book that's coming out in February, or maybe January, I think February, called Send For Me. And she's in my writing group, and it's with Simon & Schuster, and it's just the most gorgeous. It's a real departure from the 3 other books that she wrote. It's about her own family's experience with the Holocaust. So and it's like, it's interesting. It's like how mothers and daughters relationships are affected generations later because of the trauma of having a family separated during the Holocaust. So it's so beautiful. It's just a gorgeous book. And then right now I'm reading Remembrance by Rita Woods. And she's just so much fun. And that book, I'm not done with it yet, but I'm totally loving it. And I'm also reading, I don't know about you guys, I read a lot of books at once, but I'm reading Kirkland Hamill has a memoir right now called Filthy Beasts. And I knew I'd like it because I met Kirkland, and I haven't read memoir for a while. And I was like, I don't know if I like memoir. It's just been so long, and I'm loving his book. It's beautifully written. And he was born like right around the same time I was. And we both had like these massive changes in our families right about at the same age. And his family has a lot of issues with substance abuse. He writes about coming out. It's just so fascinating. So I'm totally loving that book. It's just great.
That's great. Lisa is a huge memoir.
I love them. So I'll have to check that one out. I don't think I've read one that I didn't like. I don't know. Maybe I just picked good ones, or maybe I'm just so fascinated when people are talking about their real life that I'm engrossed. I don't know what it is.
It's funny because I think with memoir, it's like, maybe we're the same. Like, I just love hearing how people's lives turn out.
Right.
It's like the high school reunion where you're like, oh, who's doing what? Who got married? Who's divorced? Who has kids?
I think I'm also fascinated because they're writing about, it's true. And like, I'm always thinking about the other people in the book. And I've read some where like, there's a divorce involved, but yet the ex-husband's okay with her writing about that. So I'm also thinking about like the whole backstory while I'm reading it too, of just publishing it. So that could be part of it as well.
Did you ever read Daughter of the Queen of Sheba?
Mm-mm.
That's a really great memoir. It's by Jackie Leiden. She used to write for the for National Public Radio, but that's a terrific memoir also.
You guys are gonna have to like get like
a memoir book club of 2.
Yeah. Well, Christina, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you today. Can you tell everybody where they can find you online and social media?
Oh, sure. So I have a website that needs some updating, but it's Christy, CHRISTI, ClancyWrites.com. And I have links to a bunch of my essays and events. And then on Instagram, I think I'm Clancy Christy. I really should have changed my name to everything with Christina when I started this, because people might not know that I'm Christy usually. And on Facebook, I have a Facebook author page that's Christina Clancy. And
yeah, you're Clancy Christy.
Oh, Clancy Christy. Okay, thanks. On Twitter, I think I'm Christy Clancy. It's maybe Clancy Christy. I should know. Thank you. This is good practice for my next Zoom.
Yeah. Well, it was
She frozen? Yeah, why don't you take it, Julie?
All right, I'll take it. All right. I think she was going to say how great it was. And Christy, don't ever feel bad about good news. Like, yeah, I mean, yes, you're at an indie thing, but Amazon, you guys, authors have to sell books, and that is part of the book selling world. So congratulations on that. That's a good.
But I do love independent booksellers. Well, I'm not saying that to blow smoke, No,
I know. Yeah.
And just a funny story, Julie, when, so Betsy, who's on the call, when I was in Baltimore, she said, you're in Baltimore with all these booksellers. You've got to find someone from Warwick's. And Julie and I were sitting next to each other. And I was like, oh, they're
at a dinner. It was just like, that was amazing. So hi, Betsy. We love having you as our customer too.
So great. I feel like everything came full circle tonight.
Yeah, it was really, it really did. Cause that was a great Winter Institute, and it was really fun. So that's, anyways, so thank you for being here again. The books, they were in the chat. Please, I always say this, it's like, I know everybody can get books lots of places, but, and hopefully you'll get them at an independent bookstore, but buy the author's books. it really, if you want to see, and another thing I like to say is that if you want an author to write their next book and the one after that, you need to keep buying their book so that they can keep, so that publishers know that they want to keep selling them. So it's a big circle that we're in here. So anyways, it was great having you, Christy.
Thank
and
you.
Lisa, thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Liz.
and Liz just said she's having an internet problem, so she said to tell you goodbye.
We've seen a lot of that. It's all
Yeah.
Zoom
I
live.
know.
Yeah.
That's the stress of these things now. It's all, the technology. It used to be like, oh, is anybody going to show up? And now it's like, oh, are the technology
Yeah, is my internet going to work? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Well,
Thank
good
you so
luck.
much.
We'll see you next time. Betsy will have her come down next summer, hopefully, when the paperback is out. We'll be in the real world, and you can come to La Jolla, and we'll have a party.
We will have a party.
Yep.
Love it.
All right.
All right. Bye,
everybody.
guys.